In Hereditary, no one escapes their fate. Every action, every thought, and every death is already written. Ari Aster's debut turns horror into tragedy, where unseen forces toy with human lives like dolls in a miniature house. And at its center, Toni Collette delivers a performance so raw it holds together the inevitable collapse of a family doomed from the start. Be sure to visit Foreplay on Letterboxd at LFN Movies and our master Foreplay list of all the films we've covered. It's October, and that means we're doing horror once again. It's our Occult Horror Arc here on Foreplay. Last week we did Rosemary's Baby. Today is Hereditary. Next week is Exhuma, a Korean film, and we will end with the original 1970s Suspiria. So a trip through some international occult horror, some classic occult horror, some new-ish occult horror. I feel like Hereditary is new enough, 2018, to say new. It's just not. It's not newish. It's new. Is that fair?
Wave or something.
Yeah.
Maybe do like sort of the Renaissance period that's coming into that, and you could argue it kicked it off.
That's right.
I think that is a great point, and probably something we'll talk about on the episode. I kind of think if you had to put a
talk about it now.
Well, okay, you're right. I suppose we can. I mean, look, if you had to put a pin on the chart of like where horror kind of seemed to be coming back into the mainstream. You know, we've talked a lot about A24 and how important they are just to kind of alternative cinema again, that they were funding really like interesting projects, and they've had a number of incredibly commercially viable hits, which, you know, like probably is typified by something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? Which is a real like kind of, it's a kitchen sink drama that's like blown up into a Dadaist absurd philosophy movie, and it's just really fucking good. And it's like A24 at the studio that will take on projects like that. And probably for a lot of people, I think if you didn't know who A24 was in 2016 when they did The Witch, the Witch,
which we've also done. If you guys want to check out our Eggers arc, just put that out there for you.
It's probably this. This is probably where a lot of normies get into A24 and start watching all of their films, because I mean, like this movie was insanely huge and influential. Like it just sort of came out of left field. I obviously was kind of like jacked up to watch this movie. It was one that I was like very keyed into. You know,
why were you excited about this? Because this was Ari Aster's directorial debut. So what excited you about it when you first heard about it?
So, but basically one of the things that like A24 do and other like, you know, kind of other outlets like, you know, Criterion are good at doing this as well, is they sort of showcase like up and coming directors pretty well. And Ari Aster was an AFI conservatory graduate, like that means like he's in a very long list of like really like, you know, pretty interesting directors that have gone through that film school. You know, that's been around since the 60s. And you know, for anyone who knows about this stuff, I think like the first class of that film school had like Paul Schrader in, and maybe Terrence Malick. So it has an insane alumni. And so anybody that's associated with that is generally on a path to like greatness. And yeah, there's all that Nepo bullshit and what have you. So Ari Aster, there was a lot of hype about, like with horror direction, there was a lot of hype about, oh, you know, he's making this movie. They didn't really talk a lot about what it was going to be about. You just knew who the cast was. Funnily enough, I was like more hyped to see Gabriel Byrne again.
It's quite a wild, like central to adult roles to get the casting for that for a first movie. How do you get those people?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also I think I don't know enough about.
These are like Oscar nominee type people. It's kind of nuts you'd get them for a up and coming horror film.
I don't know. I don't know enough about how the casting happened. But another thing I do know about was Ari Aster did a short film called Munchausen, which I urge people to go and look. That's actually a silent movie. And it's about Munchausen by proxy. It's really well done, and so I just assumed
even has thematic ties to this film in some
exactly.
sense.
Well, it's funnily enough. Obviously, he wrote Hereditary like quite a while ago, and before it got made, and he pitched it. He pitched it to A24. I want to say like might even have been as early as like 2016. And so they're A24. So they go, right, you've made a wicked short movie. You're pitching a really interesting horror movie. Here's a blank check. Go make the fucking movie. And that's essentially what happened. Now, in terms of the casting, I have no idea how he got kind of connected to these like really, really good actors. But as I said, Gabriel Byrne is an actor I think is so fucking slept on. Like
Definitely.
I think he is probably one of the most slept on working actors. He's obviously been in a ton of films that I really really like. You know, Miller's Crossing is obviously one that you would know.
Usual Suspects.
Obviously, Usual Suspects. Where, by the way, because Kevin Spacey kind of steals that show.
Yeah, people forget he's in it.
People forget he's in it, exactly.
He's mega in that film,
and he's really good in it. And so it's like, obviously, you're like, okay, this cast made you sort of pay attention to it. And so ultimately, when this movie was coming out, I was like not only was I super hyped to go and see it, and this was a movie I went to see when I was living in America. But not only was I hyped to see it, I was actually surprised at where it went, because by the time they started like drip feeding out the trailer, I'm like, all right, you know, this is going to be Toni Collette she's got hereditary mental illness, and that's the real horror. That's what it's going to be. And because I had that expectation going in, the first time I watched the movie, I'm ashamed to say, I sort of...
Oh, Richard, I know what you mean. I had this and I didn't know any of the hype bit. Actually, that's one of the things I was going to say about this film. I'm not a huge fan of this film, but I actually think it's a much better rewatch than it is the first time. Because I do think a lot of the mental illness aspects do sort of like, they're like red herrings for the first, almost like the first 2/3 of the movie, mate, before. And so I actually don't think personally, maybe I disagree with Ari Aster, I don't actually think having that be like a big twist, like dun, 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 is actually, like, the difference is in Rosemary's Baby, they are really subtle with how they build that up. The stuff's all there. It's just that they're constantly sort of giving you a red herring as to how it's interpreted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like even I'll give you a quick example. Even when you have that moment where she has that heart to heart with her son about how she'd like set them all on fire. Oh no, the therapist or whatever it is, where she'd set them all on fire with petrol. She was about to set them on fire. That's just made with the framing of the movie to make you think she's mentally ill.
Yep.
Not that like this is some sort of like occult spiritual war or some shit like that.
Well, that's the other thing as well.
So I can see it would get thrown off. Whereas when I rewatched it, it's all there from the beginning, mate. From the very, in fact, the joke is there's even people in the background to almost every scene that are just relevant to the film.
Yeah, once you introduce a mental illness in the central character, your mind will immediately go to unreliable narrator.
Right.
And that's what happened to me. I was sat there,
Right.
you know, I'm enraptured by what I'm seeing on the screen. And just the recurring motif of the diorama. And you know, for me, obviously you realize now it's representative of the cult controlling the family to bring about the birth.
By the way, that was even a red herring for me.
Yeah,
I kept
exactly.
thinking, is this diorama is that haunted? Is that going to do something? But actually, that was just some sort of weird storytelling device. That actual diorama thing, but I think it's actually, maybe it was intended as a red herring. It doesn't really do anything in the film.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
well,
symbolic.
Yeah. So what I thought when I was watching it, what I thought it was going to be is like, you know, it's like, oh, she's mentally ill, so she's out of control in her real life, but in this diorama, you can create an aspect of control by having this idyllic representation of what you want your family life to be, but really in the real world. So that's what I thought they were going for initially. But this is a great example of I think like, and this will happen to you on a number of films. I think basically if you watch a movie like be promoted from inception to the moment you sit in your chair and watch it, and you build up all of these expectations in your brain, sometimes you'll bounce off the film, even though it's a really good film that you really, really like, because you think it's going to do something else. And I'll give you a great example of this. And again, I should be ashamed to articulate this opinion, but hopefully people watching the show, they understand it is okay to be wrong. It is okay to be wrong. No Country for Old Men. I fucking hated the off-camera death. I couldn't believe it. I was so invested in the notion of a showdown and everything. And because if you'd seen the original trailer, that's how it was cut. And I hadn't read the book at that time. It was one of the Cormac McCarthy books I hadn't read. And when it happened and we get the Tommy Lee Jones monologue cut to black, I was like, this film's bullshit, boys. It's one of the best films ever made. It's one of those films you can just sit down and watch a million times. Like, it will never get boring. It will never get old. It will always be imperious. And yet the first time I watched it, I was so invested in what I thought it was going to be, I couldn't appreciate what it was. And I think probably that happened to me on the first watch of Hereditary.
Because you didn't expect it. What didn't you expect about it? What threw you off?
The fact that it is a quite linear cult movie.
Oh, yeah.
As everybody knows, I'm a pretentious asshole. So I wanted to be right about all the incredible subtext about how mental illness is the real horror.
It is there. Like, I will say, it's definitely metaphorical for mental illness, but it's like really on the nose, not subtle metaphor. You know what I mean?
It's basically an inverse Kill List. Because Kill List is all allegory and metaphor, and you mustn't take it literally. The text is not what's important. The subtext is what's important. I think in this, they use subtext to distract you from text, and actually the text is what's important.
But that's what's fun about it, because in a way, it does subvert your expectations, because it is so literal by the end. And I think that's a very important point to the structure of the movie, because they don't understand that this thing is literally controlling them, because the real horror is that they can't wrap their minds around the idea that they are caught in the Greek tragedy and that their fate is preordained and there's nothing they can do about it. And I think it's scary because it is a loss of control of these things literally happening, but it's almost like their minds are searching for other explanations that make sense, but nothing really makes sense to them because they don't even understand the reasons why things are happening. They can't understand the reasons why things are happening, and that's why it's so horrifying in the end. That's what I love about it.
Gee, isn't that also playing to kind of the point about like expectation though? Because that is more like a Rosemary's Baby era horror film where it would be literal. It would actually be the devil worshippers are the ones coming for. In the modern day, they would always try and make it some sort of allegory or some sort of social fucking. I'm not a big fan of that style of horror personally. I prefer it when it's like you can have like metaphor and stuff within it, but I don't really like it when you're trying to like you sort of say, look, I'm not really doing this thing on screen here. I'm just doing that to draw you in. I'm trying to make a point about bloody Palestine. So it's like, you know. Whereas in this film, they actually, the red herring, if anything, is trying to take some sort of grand theory about the film. Whereas if you actually do just listen literally to what the reality of it is, like I said, that's what ties to Rosemary's Baby as well, Monty. There's no way in this film, literally ever, any of these characters could have done anything differently. Nope. I said this on the Rosemary's Baby one. The most horrifying perspective actually is Gabriel Byrne's character. Bro, tell me what he did wrong in this whole film. As far as I can tell, he was just a supportive father and husband who did his fucking best till the very end. And then literally for him, out of nowhere, gets magically murked by some insane, like, witchcraft, basically, that he has no way to ever predict is coming.
I need to call the police.
He's done everything he can. He'd even like cut her off from her family early on. He's trying to protect his own family. He's done everything. This isn't like a movie with morality built into the story, you know. Like he's not. He seems like a good guy, but he doesn't have any way out of this.
What's actually interesting with his arc? I mean, if you can call it an arc, right? I mean, you know, it's like you say, he's there, he's there, he's there, he's there, he's dead. But you know, what's interesting about his arc, I think, is that again. Expectations. You view him initially as cold, callous, a little bit unfeeling, doesn't seem to be as support. Like there's just enough there. Enough
he seems distant
in the interactions. Yeah, which obviously, look, I mean, you know, if you're, it's hard to engage with someone else's bereavement, right? Like when, like obviously, she's lost her mother. She's not really moving on with it very well. She's displaying signs of mental illness. She is being difficult to be around.
She has a family history of mental illness. her mentally ill mother was living with them for God knows how long, like helping them years and years, imagine raising their second
on the relationship.
kid.
And there is an aspect of, you know, when you're in a relationship with someone and their grief is like all consuming and you just want to go back to normal, or not even that, you just want them to get their shit together. And so I think they do a very good like of sort of having that in the background. And so again, first time I'm watching this, I'm thinking the heel turn will be he's going to be the bad guy. He's going to do something bad. He's going to have done something. And obviously that never comes. And then he just quite literally he erupts into flames and dies. Like, and then that's that. You know, so
well, there is an implication there that she's sleepwalking and like turpentines him. Like there is some, there is some ambiguity in this, which I think.
Well, they introduced that as well with the confession. I mean, look, I will say certainly, the thing that people did with this movie that drove me mad was obviously it was one of those Reddit movies where everyone fucking has to come up with a theory about what happened.
There are no theories, by the way. This movie is just very literal.
Yeah, I know, but it was one of those. But what if? And then it's this, and then Pyman, and if you anagram it, and I was like, oh.
All right, so let me do the plot summary just for people here, because it is very, very literal, guys. But the thing about it is because it is more or less told from the family's POV. Like we said, the second watch is where you actually understand where things are happening, because it takes getting to the end, because it does take some crazy turns along the way to really.
When you think about it, Monty, even some of the actual plot was never shown on screen.
Yes.
It was all the stuff with her mother and also before. So you're almost coming in at the end of the story, basically.
Yeah, and so you do have to see the end of it and understand how the pieces come together to then see how the pieces are laid out and foreshadowed in the rest of the film. So, but I mean, if you're writing a bunch of posts on Reddit about it, I hope you've seen this movie more than one time. Is all I will say, because I think you watch this a second time and you're like, oh, okay, it's just. I see.
Don't worry, there's going to be a rant later on, Monty, because the Reddit is a nightmare. There are people, for example, who watched that whole film many times and literally are like, so why was that girl making weird sounds at the beginning? I can't handle it, mate. It's so bad. It's crazy, mate. It's bad. It's bad.
So the plot of the film is this, and it does escalate extremely quickly. So there is a woman played by Toni Collette named Annie. She's named Annie Graham, and so we'll call her Annie for the purposes of this film. And she has two children, older son, who's probably like, I don't know, late high school, so somewhere 16 to 18, named Peter, and a girl we know who is 13 named Charlie. Annie is an artist who creates these miniature dioramas and like little doll houses that are reflective of aspects of her life. And she has an art gallery show coming up. So she's a somewhat accomplished artist, we are supposed to believe. And her husband, whose name is Steve, is also this. They're a 4-person family in this house. And basically, the film opens with Annie's mother, who also lived with them, having recently died. And we learned over the period of this film that she had previously been estranged from her mother, that she had a very difficult relationship with her mother, that she had a brother who committed suicide, and very crucially was supposed to have like multiple or schizophrenia, but killed himself while telling their mother that he had voices inside of him that her mother put inside him.
Wasn't it even that he had people inside his head or something? Some phrasing like that.
The line is something like
on the nose, you know. Yeah.
My brother said that my mom put people inside of him, which we find out is just literally true later. So that's where all this mental illness comes about, where we are led to believe that there is this history of mental illness. And so basically they're living their lives and everybody's in grief, and we go to this funeral and they're trying to get kind of back on track with their day to day. And Peter's going to a high school party where there's going to be drinking. And so his mom asks him to she doesn't know there's going to be drinking. He just says it's going to be a barbecue. So he forces him to take Charlie, his younger sister, along as part of this. And during this trip, she has a peanut allergy or a nut allergy. She eats some cake and starts to go into anaphylactic shock. Peter then tries to rush Charlie to the hospital, driving her back. There's a deer that is dead in the road. He swerves to avoid it. Charlie's like hanging out of the car, trying to breathe because she can't breathe. And her head she gets decapitated by an electric pole, like a telephone pole. So this causes the second death in a very short amount of time, in a few weeks. Annie's been going to grief counseling meetings, like group therapy, like AA for grief. This just kind of sends her over the edge. So Charlie has a funeral, and they can't talk to each other anymore because Annie is like mad at Peter for getting Charlie killed, even though it wasn't really his fault. We find out later that this was just all set up by this cult. And this is where the occult stuff starts to come in, because Annie is then taken in confidence by a woman named Joan. And Joan, we find out later, is a friend of her mother's, but won't tell her that because we find out Annie's mother is actually the former leader of this cult. And so she starts to take her into seances, and then they have her read some stuff in a language she can't understand, which then brings Charlie's spirit back. And this all ends up with the fact that very literally the cult is trying to summon this demon Paimon into kids. And we are left to infer that Annie's mom tried to summon this demon into her brother. Paimon prefers male bodies. Now, they were estranged when Peter was born, so she couldn't do it then. So her mother then summoned it into Charlie, but Charlie was not the right vessel. So the cult engineers Charlie's death to then transfer this, resummon the spirit, transfer it into Peter. It's also worth noting that we find out later that Annie's brother was named Charles, and then her kid is named Charlie. And at the end, they refer to Peter.
That's why it's clever to make it a Charlie, though, so it's ambiguous between the genders, so that throws you off for two. By the way, Monty, that's the part, I'm not joking. I have met a lot of people, not Shredditors, who don't get that part of the film. They think it's like partway through, something sinister starts happening, and then she meets the cult. No, the whole premise of why that girl's so weird is she isn't a fucking girl. She is this like demon spirit, but stuck in essentially a flawed vessel.
Yep.
Hence why she's so weird all the time and doing stuff. By the way, if you don't know, the Paimon demon's associated with things like birds, etc. That's why she's obsessively doing all these things and beheading things and stuff. And then, as you say, the cult literally like plans that whole thing, as in like they have a fucking, their sigil is on the tree, on the fucking pole where it is. So that is all engineered. That's why actually this movie, like Richard said, it's way more literal than people
they
realize.
put the deer in the road. Like we know they put the deer in the road.
Rewatch the film. Imagine mental illness doesn't exist. By the way, some people in the conspiracy world think mental illness is a way of actually recategorizing spiritual attacks, etc., and making them so they seem safe and secularized, etc. So look, just imagine the film. Mental illness doesn't exist. That's a red herring. Just watch it, and every time someone says something like putting people in my head, just imagine that was real, and you will essentially end up with the film.
Yeah.
It's just it was masked with the rest of it.
Yep. So anyway,
I'll tell you even a part I found confusing first. That's even why there's those two distinct scenes of that like weird blue light coming in. The first one where he like bashes his head in, but then it stops. And then later when he becomes the Paimon or whatever, that's like the spirit of Paimon trying to get into his body. Hence the whole scene where the woman tells him to get out, etc. So, but that's all I have to say. That is all really confusing the first time. Like, I don't think you'll get any of that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of spooky stuff. And so anyway, by the end, what happens is, Paimon is now like running rampant because he's been resummoned due to this seance ritual. And we find out later that basically he's most effective at like actualizing and becoming Paimon and taking over the host when the host is very vulnerable, which obviously is why the cult is trying to inflict all of this insane trauma on this family by like killing Charlie as well and making their lives hell, because
it comes in once the guy attempts suicide. That's why that part isn't incidental. That's key.
Right. So they're basically trying to inflict as much like psychic damage on this family as possible so that Paimon can fully manifest within Peter. And so Peter is inhabited by Paimon. All the cultists are there. Toni Collette, Annie, her husband lights on fire because they're trying to destroy these pictures in the fireplace that appeared during the seance. And Annie then gets possessed and starts flying over the house and then saws her own head off. There's a lot of decapitations in this film. And then
you have to have 3 beheaded female members of the lineage. That's part of the sort of invocation or whatever.
Yeah. And so basically the cult has set up like the bodies of Annie's mother, Annie, and Charlie within the treehouse outside of their house. There's a really extremely creepy and disturbing occult scene where they're all worshiping Peter, who is now Paimon, and the movie ends. and that's it. You never know what happens after that. So it is all about when you first watch this film, you might be like, well, why is this an occult movie? Because you don't really understand that there is actually a cult and demonology. Paimon is a demon from the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is some, it's a demon manual that is Christian Apocrypha. And that's where we get the story. So, it's pretty straightforward, but it's really, I think what is good about this movie is the execution, because the execution that makes this movie very fun.
Yeah, and like I remember being left a bit cold by the ending the first time I watched the film, because the way it happens, again, it's like, I mean, it's classic Ari Aster now. We've seen enough of his films to know he doesn't give a fuck about like leading you out of the film. He will just end his film, and that's like a bucket of cold water to the face.
I enjoy
it. Yeah. It's a nice touch. Midsummer as well as which I think is his best film. It does the same thing, but I remember kind of just sitting there and being like, right, and then trying to piece it all together, but it didn't, like I said, the film didn't really click for me, and I didn't really appreciate what it had done until I'd sort of watched it the second time. There's some really arresting visuals and recurring motifs in this. Like, have you ever had a movie where you think it didn't get under your skin, but then you realize that it did? Like later on, like I know you jump, or you think about something in a different way. I watched this movie and it just didn't affect me at all. I got a pretty high threshold of what scares me, or so I thought. And then when I was getting off to sleep that night, as I was sleeping, I heard the click noise that the like, it just, I don't know, I must have obviously imagined it, but I fucking jumped. I was like, holy shit. Like the bit with the ball falling off in the silhouette in the dark, like, yeah, I mean, all of that stuff, or when she's just up in the fucking corner of the room, like, just in the shot, like,
it's not even done as a jump scare. It's kind of subtle, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, it's just that it doesn't even, the film doesn't even address it. It's
no.
Again, it's the opposite of,
or just the cult members in the background of like all of the shots of the film. It's just extremely creepy.
Yeah, and it's like, again, you see, because I was so all in on the idea of it really being about mental illness, I'm like, yeah, that's all about, how slow and insidious, and it's always with you, and even when it's benign and not actively driving your decisions and behavior, it's there, I was like, I was so keen to have my narrative and my view of what this movie was meant to be right. I sort of gaslit myself the first time I watched the film. And then, obviously, like I said, the second watch, and you see all the little pieces, the recurring themes. I've even done shit. You pause it when they're looking in the grimoire. Oh, yeah. I see that. Like,
yeah. There's loads of shit.
Yeah.
There's even stuff that's never overtly addressed. I'll give you an example. There is a part later when she finds the belongings of her mother, where she finds a root. It's apparently called like Dittany of Crete, which apparently is supposed to be used to make human vessels more open to possession. And earlier on, when she met the Joanne woman, that's what that Joanne woman gave her something, and then it was like she notices like a bit on a napkin or something like that. That's not even addressed, mate. This is all like subtly just put in the background, and some of that stuff is like real world occultism. It's not even like fantasy shit. It's like woven in there. So yeah, that's that. I actually think, if anything, like I say, I was wondering if it was like that, Rich. I was thinking I'm the one who didn't get this, because the first time I watched this film, I don't think it's that particularly like, doesn't hit you that hard. I know what you mean. I got to the end like, I mean, they were doing something weird at the interesting at the end there, but what the fuck was the first 2/3 about? It's so slow. But then, as I told you, on the rewatch, I think there's way more there. Like,
well, I mean,
the beginning of the film.
What the movie does with its pacing, and this is where, again, it's got a very good, we talked about it on the last show, a very good analog is Rosemary's Baby, where essentially what it does
must be inspired by that show.
Oh, I mean,
it has to be, right?
100%. What's interesting is, I think Ari Aster said the movie he was most inspired by for this was Carrie.
Okay.
The Stephen King.
I mean, they've got the high school part, I guess, but aside from that, I don't really get it.
But I mean, like what Rosemary's Baby does really well is it just drops you into this world, tells a story, and it's just steeped in dread. Like the horror is essentially expunged from you. It draws it out of you because you're wondering, like, what happens now? Like, what happens now? Like, you're very aware that something is wrong. You just don't know what the ramifications are going to be. And it's very much like this. It's like, you can see she's ill. Toni Collette, you can see she's unwell. You can see this is a family in trauma. And you can see how, like, it's starting to come unstitched. And they've got this weird little kid, and then the weird little kid dies. And then you're like, oh, God, how much worse can it get? And then, it just keeps going. And it just keeps, like, until the end of the movie is, like, very, like, rapid, like, but like you said, for the first 2/3, it just sort of revels in keeping you in this.
You don't get those clues and the things that, like, 2/3. There's no exposition at the end telling you what happened. That's just it. Yeah, that's just it. But then there's a couple of things on this I also feel like I never hear anyone talk about. Like, one is there is actually a moment in the movie way before everything goes crazy where you just overtly see a ghost do something. Where, when she's doing all the diorama shit and then a bottle of paint just falls over so that the paint can run and make her look at that piece of paper that had the Jean woman's number on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That people will miss that because you think you just knocked over a piece of thing. If you watch that, it's just for real on camera. Like, a spirit knocks that over to make you look at that piece of paper again. Like, that's just in the film, overtly on camera. Like, they're not even trying to trick you with that one.
No.
Also, there's by the way, I'll tell you another thing as well about this film is, there's a scene, I referenced this on the Rosemary's Baby one, that everyone misses, because think about it, right? If you're doing a movie that's not about their actual high school life, they just happen to go to high school, then in a normal movie, the moments they're in high school are sort of like you're wasting the day, get out of high school, get back to the plot, right? There is a moment when he is in class, Peter, and they are doing analysis of Heracles, and the teacher just tells you overtly that, like, it's all about, basically, I think, what was it I wrote down here? They say that it's about how the, like, protagonist or whatever ignores all the signs and has no choice as to what to do in the story. That is literally, like, it's hubristic. Like, that's what is actually happening in the film.
Yeah, and let me talk about that, because the Greek tragedies are really the core of the themes of this movie. And so with Heracles, the question that's asked of the high schoolers in the classroom is it more tragic if their fate is unavoidable, or less tragic, right? And a girl raises her hand and says, it's more tragic because they can't do anything to change the realities of their life. And if we actually talk about the myth of Heracles, what is interesting about that is that Heracles is a victim of forces far beyond his control. Now, you may think of him, also Hercules, that's just the Roman name. Heracles was his Greek name. So if you think about what you know about Hercules, you may think about the 12 labors, but do you know why he had to do the 12 labors, where he killed all those monsters and cleaned the stables, et cetera, et cetera? It's because he killed his wife and kids. And why did he kill his wife and kids, you may ask? Well, Hera made him go insane. The goddess Hera made him go insane and kill his wife and children. For what crime, you may ask, did she make him go insane and have mental illness and kill his crime and children, or his wife and children? Well, you see, it was the crime of being born, because Zeus, her husband, cheated on her and made Heracles, had an affair, of which with a woman, a mortal woman. So Heracles was born, and then he just existed, and Hera hated him for that, made him go crazy. So if you actually think about it, first off, again, killing your spouse directly happens in this film. Killing your children. Now, she doesn't technically directly do it, but her mother kills her child, for example, and, metaphorically kills Peter, because he just becomes a vessel for this demon. And all of this was completely out of control. And that's where we get the Hereditary name. Again, it's a red herring for the mental illness, because it's not about mental illness. Now, maybe you could say the whole film is a metaphor for mental illness, which you could take it as, but I think it's much more interesting to say, oh, wow, they totally fooled you. This is actually like a fated Greek tragedy. And is it more tragic, that they can't actually escape from this fate? And then later on, they also reference Agamemnon and Iphigenia. And for those of you who don't know, Agamemnon had a daughter named Iphigenia, and he had to sacrifice her in order to reach Troy for the Trojan War. And this later kicks off the Oresteia and that cycle of plays where Agamemnon is then, when he returns from Troy, murdered by his wife Clytemnestra because he killed their daughter in order to get favorable winds, basically, to go to Troy. So there's a lot of child killing within Greek mythology, and the sense of, can you actually escape your fate or your duty? And so these are the examples that Ari Aster brings up in order to reinforce that and to make it very clear to the audience that none of these characters you are seeing can ever escape what they're doing. And then on top of that, the other thing Hereditary does is it introduces this dollhouse visual metaphor where she is creating her life in miniature as if she's playing with it. And the brilliance of the direction of this movie visually is just that it's all there in the opening shot when we zoom in on the dollhouse and then it turns into the real house. And so you are told right from the first shot of this movie that these are dolls that are being played with by the cult members, and they are not in control of their own life.
And of course, relating it to the Greek stuff, I mean, that is how a lot of plays do view the gods. The gods were
literally
capricious, and they would just fucking play with your life.
Look, this is a cheesy example, but look at the movie Clash of the Titans from the 80s. Yeah, they literally have the gods playing with action figures in there.
It's like a chessboard, wasn't it? Moving around or whatever.
But like when we talk about the Greek, they are being toyed with by fate here, and then on top of all the shots that we get of the dollhouse and kind of moving in and out, it's the false sense of control, because Annie thinks by recreating the scene of her daughter's death that's going to help her process her trauma or somehow control that situation. And her husband Steve just comes in and is like, "That's fucked up. Like, stop doing that."
Jesus Christ, Annie. You're not planning on letting him.
But also the way that the film is shot in general, even when we're in the real house, it's shot as if it's in a dollhouse. As in, it feels like there's been a wall that's cut away and the camera is like panning from room to room, as if we are walking by a dollhouse and looking inside, or you're kneeling over and moving your head across the dollhouse. It's a really creepy way to shoot this movie, and it makes it feel very artificial and uncomfortable, which it's designed to be, right? Because everything is structured, everything is controlled. Fate has these characters in its grip. It's not going to let them go. They can't do anything about it. They don't even know what's like dolls in a dollhouse. They don't even know what's going on. They don't understand the forces that are controlling them.
Like I said before, I don't think it's possible, Monty. You can wind this movie back. I don't know how you avoid this outcome. Because, for example, when you understand that the Annie woman doesn't know that she's surrounded by cultists, she only knows about her mother being a part of that group. Well, that means, for example, from literally the funeral onwards, she is surrounded by the cultists. Like, they're at the support group she's at. Then the person befriends her there under totally different pretexts, and only later, after winning her. It's why I made the comparison in Rosemary's Baby. That Joan woman reminds me of the woman with the glasses that's rocking the baby at the end. She uses the fact that she's a kindly older woman to win you over like an aunt or something. But then when she goes like evil mode, she's fucking terrifying, mate. Like, what about when they're going to do the seancing and she's like, "What?" There's like a moment where she just snaps like that all of a sudden. So then also there's the detail, what people won't know. This is actually built into the law of vampires. If you don't know, by the way, in the modern day, people have this crazy epiphany and think they're geniuses where they go, "Oh, what you do in the modern days, because you could get in political trouble, is you make a fantasy setting that explores your political ideas." Yeah, there was a thing before politics called religion, mate, and the same thing was done in all of history. So guess what? I won't say what it is, but vampires are a metaphor for a certain type of individual in society, let's say, who does those things. So anyway, the law of the vampire famously is you have to invite them in, don't you? If you come to your house, you have to say you can come in, then they can come in the window, they don't think about Fright Night, etc. That's a key component of it, right? That's why she has to be tricked into doing this incantation with this ritual with her whole family, where they all say all the wrong things that make the demons able to come and possess them, essentially. But again, how could you avoid that? Because that was presented to you as like almost like white magic, like you just contacting a dead loved one who's out there. By the way, there's even an angle there that this might be pushing it too far, but this the child of the Joan woman was called Louis. Like, that is like Lucifer, by the way. That would just be the short version if you want to get silly with that, isn't it? Where it does the drawing on the chalkboard. So you're almost tricked into that. Like, you're led down that on false pretenses. But it would be the same in real life as if someone talked you into a contract that you sort of like half read and signed, listen, mate, unless you have that all on video, you're going to be held to that contract. That'll be treated as legally binding. If people don't know, that's one of the most interesting things, Monty, about things like the Lesser Key of Solomon. Grimoires aren't about the idea that people think Harry Potter, you do a spell, something appears in real life and does something. It's all about the idea there's like a mental realm of spirit that they're acting on. And what happens is it's literally like making a legal contract with someone. Some people even speculate that's where the concept of legal contracts come from. Like you make, it's why the famous thing of like the cursed monkey paw joke is like you have to be very specific with the contract you make with spirits, because they might honor it, but in a manner that fucks with you. And so they did what they said they'd do, but in a way you don't want. So that's all built into it. And then also another thing that, where was I going with this one? There was one other part as well I wanted to bring up.
The contracts?
I'll tell you one thing, Monty, that is just nightmare fuel. This is where people who get things wrong about movies do tilt the fuck out of me. Monty, on the subreddit for this movie, there are people showing off that they have tattooed the sigil of the demon onto their bodies. By the way, even if you don't believe in the occult, great way to go mentally ill. That would be a fantastic way to make yourself mentally ill.
It definitely draw.
I'll never understand why
I
people do
love
these things.
this horrible dark energy that consumed these people's lives.
That's what you took from the film. Oh, actually, that reminds me. I've remembered because of the diorama thing. That's actually also why this movie, for me, I did bounce off it. Is I don't find the Toni Collette character particularly relatable. Like early on, I'm on her side because her mother's died and people are being kind of a prick to her. Bro, the two scenes, the one where, as you're saying, she is right out in open in her house making a giant diorama of the tragic death of her daughter, even though her son could walk in at any moment, by the way. And then that scene at the dinner table where she just blames him, basically. Like, those two scenes make me just bounce straight off this movie.
If you could have just said, I'm sorry, or faced up to what happened, maybe then we could do something with this. But you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept. And I can't forgive.
So I don't, at that point, I don't really care. Like, actually, I feel bad for the Peter character that dies, and technically the Charlie, but I never met her. She was just a fucking vessel empty. And Gabriel Byrne, they're the ones I feel sorry for. The main woman, I can take it or leave it. Man.
Look, I think that's one of the great parts of this film is that
she even says out loud, Monty, when the father says, like, why are you doing that? She goes, it's not about him. Like, there you go, prick. It's just all about you. Go fuck yourself. Then.
Look, she is deeply unlikable, but the processing of grief is a core part of this movie. It's the majority of this movie, from the support group to her experiencing multiple deaths. Like, and I think Toni Collette is fucking amazing at nailing these scenes, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think grief is really core to this, and the way that people act irrationally during grief. And I do think she blames Peter, which is fucked up. And like, she's not a likable person in this. She's horrible.
It's kind of interesting, actually. Like, Ari Aster has alluded in a few interviews to the fact that she is kind of like, she's aware on some level that there are these controlling forces in her life. And that's why when she does the sleepwalking aspect, there's that scene where, she's going to burn them. And she says something like, I'm not trying to kill you, I'm trying to save you. And it's like she is trying, Ari Aster kind of alluded to the fact that maybe, because obviously he never says anything literally, and he's quite honest about his writing process. Like, for instance, he made this movie around the idea of, the first two ideas that came to him were a girl gets decapitated while sticking her head out the window of a car, and then later on her mother severs her own head and her corpse floats away. That was it. That was his starting point for this film. That's just, Ari Aster's just a weird cat like that. But anyway, he kind of alluded to the fact that maybe she's aware of it on some level. And so I've kind of, like, the more and more I've watched this movie, and again, I've probably seen this movie now 15, 16 times, somewhere around that. I think now, for me, I interpret her blaming him as almost like her own kind of like invocation. Like, wouldn't it be good if it was an accident? Wouldn't it be good if it was her son's fault and he wasn't on rails and it wasn't always going to happen in the exact way that it happened because it was designed to happen that way and bring about Pyman? So I think, like, even though she says that, I don't think necessarily she feels that. That's kind of like how I think about a lot of the things she says. I think she has very,
she is unlikable, but she is unlikable because she's behaving in a way that is seemingly in direct opposition to her nature, and that is making her crazy. So, for example, there are just things that happen to her. And again, going back to the idea of fate, she didn't ask to be born to a cult leader mom who tried to put a demon in her brother, and then her brother kills himself, and that traumatizes her as a child. And then we find out later she didn't want to have Peter, and so she became a mother kind of against her own desires. So her entire life has been her whole life is her living in situations she doesn't want to be a part of.
I will say, Monty, the one area I can like out meta contextually have sympathy is the fact that, like, as I said before, if anything, the genius of the film is that people in the modern world watching this film don't believe in demons. So they already are primed for a secular answer. And in this universe, by the way, that's actually the one part that's mildly jarring. There is no Hutch character from Rosemary's Baby. She just finds an old set of books and you have to draw the rest of the conclusion yourself. There is nobody who could have helped you battle this spiritually. There's no exorcist character that comes in, a priest. There's nothing like that. So actually, you could that's why you could never have escaped it, Monty, because you would always just be treated as you are crazy or you are being taken over by being crazy. And there's no person that comes in and identifies what's going on and can sort of like solve the problem.
Well, and the people who helping you are actually hurting you. Also, the people attempting to help you are actually there to hurt you more, which is really messed up. But she is just. I think this is also why she makes these little doll houses, is that she's never been in control of her own life. That's the whole point. She wasn't in control of where she was born and who she was born to. She wasn't in control of her mother's actions. She wasn't in control of her brother's death. She wasn't in control of having her own kids, it feels like. And then,
by the way, Monty, I'll feed it in here. One of the things that will actually tilt you about the people on the subreddit is one of the more popular suggestions they all come up with and think they're geniuses is they think there should be a prequel about the mother.
No!
God. You didn't get any of this, did you? You didn't get any of this, bro. That would be like asking for a prequel from the old fucking couple in Rosemary's Baby, you dickhead. The whole point is the movie works because we don't know what happened to them. Oh, great. Jesus Christ, people are bad, bro. The joke is, it is some like Henry Ford shit. If you ask a dickhead what they want, they wouldn't say, "Oh, can I have like a different Alien movie? Can I just have like the story about the space jockey? And can I have another one with Alien?" Like they would ask for that. They would just ask for the same shit. They're fucking idiots, man.
Well, but I think that's what's so crazy about Annie's character is that she has been trapped in her fate for entire existence, and she's basically living a life she didn't want to have. And now she's middle-aged. Her kids are in high school, and she never wanted this. She never wanted any of it. She never wanted to be part of this family. She never wanted her own family. So what the fuck is she doing?
You think about it, Monty, because no one knows as we're watching the movie with her character, no one knows that part of the summoning thing is you have to have 3 heads of a hereditary line of women. Well, no one even knows that essentially by the time she figures it out, Monty, she's the last one left.
Yep.
So if she gets possessed, it's over. It's because you don't even know that that's what the daughter's head thing was. I even think, by the way, the secular explanation is what allows that scene actually almost before the end of her dead mother's body being there, not to actually be as horrific, because you're obviously going to think that's a stupid vision, isn't it? And you assume, doesn't everyone, when they're watching the film, assume Gabriel Byrne is going to go up the stairs into the attic and he's going to go, there's nothing there, like you've seen in 1 million movies, but he doesn't. That's when the movie twists.
It's also great, by the way.
That is a classic trope that they always do, isn't it? Oh, it's in this room, please.
He thinks she's mentally ill, so he's just like
basically Mulder from X-Files.
Yeah, he thinks she's mentally ill, so he's just like, fine, I'll go look at it. I know there's nothing there, and he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's the unexpected part, isn't it? That's almost the twist. Great. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say as well, I mean, in terms of like movies that have been made about like the occult, the level of research that must have gone into this is fucking pretty wild. Like, I mean, like, first of all, I'm not saying like I'm reading like demonological texts in my spare time. I won't pretend, pretentious as I am.
That's what I do actually.
Sure, of course, that's definitely a very Monty thing to do. But it's like
this where every bit of trivia is real, Richard.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Liftdock Pandemonium does mean like open all demons.
Yeah.
When it says Satonium, that's a real thing. The actual character Paimon is a demon, like a lesser prince or whatever from the fucking. It's all real. Yeah, that's also the other thing. Part of the genius is this is well known within occultism, but occultism in the modern day is a tiny fraction, and half of them are fucking LARPing anyway. So no one does know these things. So. Yeah. If it would be amazing script writing if you'd made it all up too, but it's also all real, which is why it fits together. I feel like
and it's like it's kind of interesting to have like made all of those like choices. Like, I mean, you can have any demon, right? Like, but it's like he picks a very specific one and then weaves all of the things, like all of the stories about Paimon into the movie, kind of like his little visual motifs. It's not just the sigil, it's like you said, it's like the association with birds, the recurring motif of beheadings, all necessary for the invocation. And essentially the movie is the
by the way,
the
there's even a
itself,
moment in the Charlie's Notebook where they find, I think it's after she's dead, where it has a bird's head crowned, which is essentially the end of the film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the crown is on the severed head. And it's like, to go that, like, you don't need to do that, Ari. You don't need to go that hard, like, into this. You don't need to research some fucking, I don't even know, Babylonian or whatever the fuck it was.
I mean, but that's what makes me love this movie, though.
It's crazy. It's like the level of detail is actually mental, and it's like Duncan said,
and like,
blink and you miss it references.
That's also what's clever, Richard. This uses like the Hemingway iceberg theory. It doesn't flex the fact that this is all real knowledge. It just leaves these hints, which actually, like I said, I'm pretty sure you have to put some of these together after the film. You wouldn't get it in the moment you're watching it,
Yeah, certainly. And I think as well, I'd be like, horror, you're always primed for the rug pull. And I think that's probably why I've grown to really like adore this film. It actually doesn't rug pull you. If you might feel that way the first time you watch it, but as we've said, that's not what happens. I mean, look, I'll tell you another movie that I think is a good reference point for this. The Babadook. Now, I don't like The Babadook. I remember William Friedkin, the great William Friedkin, said he'd seen a movie that like blew his fucking dick off. He loved it so much.
Oh, mate, this was a very hyped movie. Yeah. People say it's like one of the greatest modern films and stuff like that.
And if William Friedkin tells me a movie is good, I'm going to fucking listen to William Friedkin, right? So I remember watching, again, similar level of hype. I fucking hate the ending to this movie. People don't know the Babadook is basically like, it's a single mother. She's got a kid. He's like just a fucking nightmare. You've probably seen the meme of him screeching in the back of the car and she's like shouting at him like, why can't you be normal, and all of this stuff. And then ultimately while that happens, she's reading like a storybook, and this like top hat wearing shadowy creature is introduced via the world of fiction and then becomes a very real thing in their lives. She has multiple hallucinations, and then the movie ends like after this kind of like denouement. Well, by the way, again, it's ratcheting up the tension, ratcheting up the dread, and then it ends with she has beat the Babadook. The Babadook is in the cellar and she's feeding him like worms in a bowl. And then it just ends, and she's got her life under control and a relationship.
Woo, at the screen.
Actually, ending? And it's like I understand that what this is, again, subtextually, what it's about is like the pressures of being a mother and raising a child, and you can get over it. And it's like fuck. I thought that was so whack, like because it really just it was all subtext by the end. And like you build up a monster, you build up all this tension around it, and then it's like the single mother conquered it by just getting her shit together or something like that. So I fucking hated the Babadook, but everybody loves that film. The Babadook, funnily enough, became an LGBT icon, and he's got rainbow colors and everything. He turns up at
guys.
Parades
It literally is like a demonic force that preys on children. You haven't thought this one through. You never think it through, do you? You guys, you can be. Considering you're the media literacy group, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. So the Babadook got caught. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing up the Babadook is because obviously this was like another marquee horror film that got like loads of mainstream praise and did okay financially, nowhere near as successful as Hereditary. But I felt rug pulled at the end. I felt it had been an exercise in futility. It's never a movie I've ever wanted to go back to. I've watched it twice. I'll never watch it again. I think it's one of the most overrated movies of all time. And I hate that feeling where it's like dread, tension. Here's a twist. Or, it doesn't matter. Here's a Deus Ex Machina. I fucking hate it when they do that in horror films. What I like about Hereditary is it really does all of the things it promises it's going to do to you. It doesn't lean into which I don't even think there's really a jump scare in the film. It doesn't rely on cheap tricks.
The closest is just the head getting chopped up by the thing. That's about it. That's not even that crazy. Though. Yeah. So you can see that coming.
It really shows you, like right from the start, this is what you're going to get with this film. We're going to do all of the things that we say we're going to do. And, you know, when you watch it the second time round, you're like, holy fuck. Like, it's actually, this movie is a statement of intent in terms of like, yeah, the bad thing is going to happen. The bad thing is going to happen. It's unavoidable. We are going to summon the demon, and it's going to cost this family all of their lives. And we're going to do it, and we're going to succeed. And it's so like I say, that it doesn't fuck with you in the sense that by the end of a horror movie, you know, it's got that like weird ambiguity. Like even Rosemary's Baby sort of does it a little bit. Like, you know, she's like, oh, but he is cute.
That's a way to sort of subvert you at the end. It doesn't feel as horrifying, totally, does it?
Yeah, it's like, that's,
by the way,
I
agree. Because one thing I do think about this film as well is this film isn't trying to be The Exorcist, where there's good versus evil and who will win this epic battle, right? The evil in this film isn't even like evil in any movie. It's not trying to explain to you what it's doing. It's not doing a James Bond or so I'm going to take over, because no, it's not telling you anything. It's trying to enact its plan, which, by the way, is just malevolent. It's just a malevolent plan enacted in real life by greedy, fucked up humans who were damaged. And so, as I say, if you are the main family in it, you are just pawns in a chess game, and you are pawns, by the way. You have no extra ability. You're outmatched at every fucking corner. Like, I would challenge anyone to explain in this film, because you know people love to do that in horror films where they don't understand the premise and they go, why did they run out into the forest? No, right? Try doing that with this film and explain to me what you would do differently. I don't know what you could do, mate. Especially if you take into account what their past is and the fact that she grew up with all this shit around her. Like, it's why it is a great tragedy, because you're almost on rails. You're going towards your fate no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that for me is why the movie is like as strong as it is narratively. Like, there just isn't an off-ramp. You know, like when you watch horror movies, there's a tendency like where you put yourself, like you're talking about, you put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist or whoever it might be. Why did you do that? Why did you go to the cabin? Why did you read the fucking Necronomicon?
Even in Rosemary's Baby, because she explicitly gets that book that shows her who the people are. That gives you the false hope she can get out of it somehow. You know, maybe there's a way, like maybe when she goes to the doctor, someone will believe her. Maybe that's never in this movie. In fact, this movie has no hope in it whatsoever. Like, no. And when it ends, like I say, it was almost like a self-contained thing that was always going to happen.
Yeah. And I also like as well, it doesn't dwell on the whys. This is a key component to occult movies, I think. Like, why do you want to bring about Satan in the end of, like, you know what I mean? Why do you want to? I'm a Satanist. So it is
but I like about it. Listen, they're like, Pyman is supposed to bring great wealth, and they're like, yes, shower us with riches, Pyman, which makes it seem even more fucked up, because these people are doing it for like material gain, with this like absolutely causing insane devastation.
Yeah, just and like I say, not even Satan, not even the big chief, not even the most powerful of all the demons, just Pyman, just a minor.
Your old friend Pyman.
He's even got a shit name, you know, like Pyman. You know, here he is. What's his special power then? Doesn't really have one.
I also love how they picked that picture of Pyman where he's just like some dude on a camel, and it looks kind of lame.
Yeah,
he's like not scary at all.
Yeah, he's just shit. But like we did it. We brought him about. You know, we killed.
By the way, Richard, I'll even go one further. It intentionally makes it so you can never really know the reasons why. I'll give you an example. One of the mini red herrings is the letter she reads from her mother. Yeah. That's like, you know, what you might hate me or whatever, but all the things I've done, it'll be worth it for the reward. Yeah. How would that help the Toni Collette character? All she gets is beheaded, mate, and then her son gets like shit. I don't know what she gets.
It'll all be worth it, just not for any of us.
Like, look, it's implied the Ellen woman's maybe even going to like marry the Pyman character or the devil or something. You know, there's element for her. She gets fucked up. That's even malevolent itself, mate. Her mother actually didn't really care about her, but they put that in there to make you think it's mental illness or there's something else going on. Or it's another good red herring.
I mean, I suppose the inference with this always is, if you can summon a demon or summon Satan, then it stands to reason that all of the other biblical aspects are on some level correct. And that obviously implies a spiritual realm, an afterlife of sorts, right? You know, heaven, hell, all of that stuff. And so I guess there is that implication there. Maybe there is some sort of reward if you die in service of manifesting.
That's why we need the sequel to be about heaven, Richard. Whatever, you know what I mean? Again, by the way, as a general note, please don't ever read anyone on Reddit's opinion about sequels or prequels. Don't make any of those films, please. Thank you.
But yeah, so it's like I just like the fact that the movie really just like it doesn't look for a cop out. Like it you know, it's not like, oh well, you know, fucking hell, I've just remembered there's a bottle of holy water in a hooker, and you don't get out of it. You are it is an actual terrible thing that is unfolding, and you are going to watch, and you are,
like I say, I think if this was filmed in the 80s, there would be some like John Constantine kind of character would turn up like, hey, I can see what's going on here, or some witch doctor, or some priest that's local that knew her but there's none of that. They never give you a lifeline, mate. There's no fucking like life preserver ever thrown in the water.
Or like Gabriel Byrne puts it together.
Yeah.
You know, he's like sat
Sure.
you know, he puts down, he's doing the crossword, and he sees a word like, and he goes and you know, something like that. There's none of that here. It's like, actually, like, I mean, for me, it's very, if I had to use a word to describe the horror in this film, it's stifling. It's like suffocating. It is all pervasive, and it is
also, I don't know about
omnipresent.
But also, when I watched this film, another trick I think of the trope of traditional storytelling is there is no protagonist. Like, you could believe the Peter one is at one point. By the way, again, what does he do?
Kind of him.
He just fucking goes to school. That's all he does. He doesn't do anything wrong at any point in this movie, by the way, except when his mother tricks him into doing some weird ritual. That's it.
Yeah.
All he did is go to school, smoke some weed, not listen in class, and then try and fuck someone. Yeah. And then therefore he should be killed and used as a vessel for a demon king as well. Okay, I guess.
I mean, but that's also kind of, I mean, you know, again, getting back to the subtext that I was so obsessive about. Obviously, as well, that is, you know, the kind of way that mental illness as it's passed down generationally. You don't do anything. You just have a predisposition to schizophrenia, and one day it totally fucking ruins your life. Or
isn't it also true? I'm going from memory here, but aren't actually men more susceptible to mental illness like that too?
Let me get this, because there's certain types. Basically, there is a schism in what type you are more likely to get, and I think I think it's true. Men are more.
I know what you mean. I think
men are more likely to get schizophrenia.
Yeah,
and women
I think
are more
women
likely
get
to
like
get
BPD
bipolar,
and shit like that. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I heard.
I think that's how it works. Although, you know, they're always updating this stuff, so don't come to us for scientific research. I'll just say that before we get demonetized.
Please do not come to Foreplay.
Leave that to the
president. Now let me have my Tylenol in peace. So yeah, it's you know, look, I think probably that there is an aspect to that, right? Like, you know, it's not that you can completely eschew the subtext from the film. I think they are talking about mental health and how it can cause trauma in families. They are talking about grief and how grief can be passed down, like, you know, in ways,
and how it tears apart the family and causes you to be bitter against people, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's doing all of those things. This is an Ari Aster movie. You know, there's layers to this shit. And, you know, I think it's doing all of those things. But the key component is it isn't one of those movies where the subtext is the important part. The subtext is why this movie stays with you. You know you've seen something special, I think, when you first watch it. You know, you just can't quite put your finger on what it was or attribute to it. It's like this weird, like, and then you will come back to the film. As I said, I think Midsommar is a superior movie to this, but as a calling card to kind of like come out of the gate.
I mean, it's such an insane debut.
Oh, you know, I mean,
it'll be
the level of technical craft. It's
crazy.
Going on directorially is insane. Like, this isn't like we've done a load of sweet spot horror movies, right, down the years, like where the movie looks scuffed or sounds scuffed or the performances aren't quite right, but it's got a really good idea, a really good premise. Maybe it does have a performance that holds it up. Maybe the script is the most important part. You know, think about all of our spooky deep cuts Halloween, right? That was pretty much the premise of that, was finding movies that you haven't seen that might not be perfect, might not be flawless. They are like scuffed gems.
Except for Cure, which is just really good.
Yeah, which is,
by the way, I'll drop this in here, Richard. Ari Aster did a Criterion Closet interview where he pulls Cure off the shelf and calls it the greatest movie ever. So
yeah.
If you guys are curious, Ari Aster, and I talked about this during Cure. I talked about Hereditary. Like, Cure's fingerprints are all over Hereditary as well.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit. Go on, give some of the parallels.
Well, it's just in terms of the psychology of the characters, and you don't really understand whether it's mental illness or whether it's some malevolent force that is going on. done within the context of the story, whether these actions are fated or not, the extreme creepiness of some of these characters, the way that the movie looks and plays with color as well. But it is, it definitely is in that vein. And if you guys haven't seen Cure, watch it, but also watch our episode about it from our Scary Deep Cuts arc.
Yeah. And look, so just to talk as well a little bit more about the technical aspects. I mean, first of all, this movie is right. This movie was made with something like a $10 million budget.
Yes.
It looks so much better than that. I mean, the way this movie looks is insane. The visual like even just you said, the opening shot of coming out and like the level of technical craft that's gone into it. It has this really like polished feel, and I love the way that when they do a lot of shots have this like there's like something, a soft dissolve like in the background where there's something going on. It just feels like out of reach, out of your grasp until the scene moves on. There'll be someone stood in the background. You can't quite see who they are. I
believe this is also a film that does do that thing where they actually technically do like optical tricks. Like if you turn up the brightness, you can see things that you couldn't quite make out.
Her being up in the
there, right?
I mean that's one of those things. If you ever watch dog shit like Cinema Sins or something like equivalent of that, where it's just like all the things you may have missed in Hereditary.
By the way, those are the worst like time for quality investments you can ever make, because any film like this or Tenet or something, you're gonna go, I want to know all the scene. Mate, these people will draw it out for 30 minutes telling you the most basic ass shit. They're terrible, those videos. It's actually one of the reasons I'm glad we do reviews and stuff, because the actual media for movies is dog shit online, mate.
Oh, there's a lot of terrible content out there. But one of the things is if you turn the brightness up, you can see she's up in the wall. Then she does that later, doesn't she? When your body is like, oh my god. But like,
my favorite is when they go, and I'm going to tell you at the end why it all happened, and then it's just like some shit theory they spun up. It wasn't even like, because you're thinking they must have like read the script. They just spin off their own shit at the end. It's always terrible.
I mean, Ari Aster couldn't be more explicit. Like, he is one of those directors who he wants you to feel however you feel about the movies he makes. That's it. Like, he doesn't, he's done AMAs on Reddit where people are asking him, but what about this and what about this, and what do you think? He's one of those guys.
A bit like Robert Eggers in that sense.
Eggers is like that.
Not really giving you the answers, right?
Tarantino is like that as well. He's like, if you feel a certain way about a movie or why a movie's called this or whatever it might be, good. That's your interpretation of the movie, and that's perfect. It was like, quite famously, it was why he never explained what was in the suitcase in Pulp Fiction, right? Like he wants you to engage with the movie, come up with your own theories, and
it's like David Lynch, right? Who would make all the nonsense up to like, I mean, he just wrote nonsense about his own movies that would just confuse people. That clearly isn't what the movie's actually about. And he was very explicit in saying that he wanted people to experience his movies on their own terms.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this. It's like ultimately, there's going to be things you miss each and every time you watch it. Probably there's people are going to come into this movie and they're probably going to feel like it eluded their grasp, but that's okay. Some movies are actually by designed to be watched multiple times. They're so dense and rich, you're not going to get everything the first time. It's like you're gonna miss little parts to it, and then you can come back later, watch it again, and then eventually you'll sort of see just how much effort went into telling what is a simple story told with all the mechanical complexities of like real life. It's like that's how life is, right? Like there's always stuff going on in the periphery. There's always stuff going on around you that might seem irrelevant, but it does have an effect. And this is sort of one of those movies where it's like I just think the level of competency from writing to directing to the performances to the level of attention for detail. I mean, we're talking about Toni Collette. She is obviously the standout turn in this. But the guy, Alex Wolff, who is the actor who plays Peter, the bit where he converts and he's like got his hand up and he gets all fucking bong-eyed and has like a fucking seizure, that is a horrifying piece of physical acting. I mean, like... What
he's smashing his face off the desk's really disturbing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they apparently what they did for that was they actually had like it's like a sponge kind of veneer, but Ari Aster said like the actor went full fucking send. He did smash his head. Like, I mean, you know, it was obviously not like straight onto solid wood because that wouldn't be safe, but they were genuinely shocked on the set when he bust that performance out. And you know, Ari Aster, I think that was one of the scenes he did in it's either a GQ or series where it's like they have directors on to talk about scenes they directed, and he picked that from Hereditary. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like everyone is just so dialed in to what they need to do to really convey the horror of this story. And like I said, this movie is an affecting movie. I think it's got so many visuals in it. The bit where she's severing her own head with a piano wire, that's like so unsettling to watch. Like the look on her face.
Charlie's decapitated head on the ground,
yeah,
with like the insects swarming over it.
The ants crawling over it.
It looks amazing too. It looks so good.
Really good severed head. Yeah, really good effect. I mean, and that actress as well, the one who plays Charlie, Millie Shapiro, like she was basically what they did is they had an open audition for the kid because they were like, we just want to find some weird little kid, right? That's what they wanted to do. So the casting went out. We want to get a weird little kid, and Millie Shapiro is she's not a weird little kid in real life. I mean, she obviously has that look. Where I assume she must have like a genetic condition or something. Apparently, I'm not, or if so, they're not talking about it. But she's an incredible musical talent. She can sing and dance. She does like fucking Broadway or some shit, like, and it's like that's
probably beatbox, I imagine.
Yeah, that's good. She's literally like so good in this as. She feels otherworldly when you watch her performance. She doesn't feel like a person, right? You know, even when she's dead, like no one is sad that the creepy little weird kid dies in this film. Like I'm telling you, I've introduced this movie to a lot of people, and I'm like, oh, we sad? And like, no, it's fucking weird. Like it's bad that it happened, but yeah, there was something off about her, and it's like she absolutely nails that. She nails that the sibling friction of like just not being able to connect to a brother or a sister as well as like that little aspect to the relationship and to the movie. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like everyone is fucking great in this film. And it is such a singular vision in like what Ari Aster set out to do and how he got everybody on board. Tenured actors just being allowed to work with the material.
And we should talk awesome. About Toni Collette because like it's also relevant. I think when this film
she should have had an Oscar. You'll hear people say this a lot about like performances, but one of the things I absolutely detest about the Oscars is how snooty it is to like horror movies, and it's like it either has to be like. For a horror movie to get any mainstream recognition from the Oscars, it either has to be foreign. Right, you don't mind a foreign horror or a foreign movie with elements of horror, and then they just put it into the foreign category, or it has to be like some sort of like, you know what I mean? It has to be like a prestige movie. It can't be a little indie film like this. And like, it's like, bro, think about how good The Substance is. That was the film of 2024. I mean,
Debbie Moore did get nominated at least for an Academy Award.
But it didn't win anything. How the fuck are you not gonna like give that like best like costume design or something at least? Are you fucking crazy? That film looks like nothing you've ever seen.
Because nobody saw it, Richard. The answer is that all the people in the Academy just vote on things without seeing it.
And in The Substance, they even did what you would think is Oscar bait. They did, if fucking you-know-who was still alive, Ebert, he would have loved that's the bathroom from The Shining, I am clever, and good boy points. You'd get extra marks for that normally. I agree.
So, yeah. But I think another factor that affected this, Richard, was when this movie was released, because it was released January 21st of 2018. Like, a fucking terrible time to release a movie, and certainly not a time when you release a movie that people are going to remember over a year later when the Oscars actually happen. I mean, this is like the death zone for movies. So the fact that it grossed 90 million basically off of word of mouth is crazy, first off. And second off, I think, you know, basically the performance that we see from Toni Collette, which is hands down one of my favorite actress performances ever, I mean, the way that she deals with her grief in this is so astonishing. And when Charlie dies, unforgettable scene with her screaming.
It's actually
on
a
the
really
floor.
good.
I can't. I just want to die. No. Oh, God. Oh, God. And there's no one. I just need to die.
It's actually a really good contrast to Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby, because Mia Farrow is like the kind of like almost helpless, subdued, like vulnerable. Toni Collette is fucking in your face, like actually articulates her crazy.
Yes, and is like incredibly neurotic. I mean, the monologue she gives at the grief meeting
group
is
insane.
Insane performance. And it's such a bizarre character. And for her to bring this character to life in a believable way is the core of this movie. Like, this movie would be ruined by a bad person in Annie's role. And, I'm not going to hate the fact that she didn't win Best Actress, because, I mean, I would have picked her, but Olivia Colman for The Favorite did win, and Olivia Colman is really good in The Favorite too. But I will say, to not even be nominated, and Lady Gaga is nominated for A Star Is Born remake, does make me hurt on the inside, because Toni Collette's performance is just top tier. And I think if you watch this movie and don't identify that, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like, it is one of the great performances I have seen.
Yeah, for sure. And look, one of the things that when actors do have these like big performances and they're playing like neurotic characters, or characters that are like very scattershot in their emotions, everybody else has to kind of like, when they're interacting in the scene, there's like a little interplay. If Gabriel Byrne went too big in a lot of his scenes with her where they're arguing, it wouldn't work. It would feel neurotic. It would feel like Kramer versus Kramer or something, where it's just like just drenched in fucking, almost like really over the top, kind of like,
I think Gabriel Byrne has to understate his performance, even though he is a really good actor himself. To let Toni Collette shine.
He is the perfect, like when they're fighting, he is the perfect representation of a man that's just sort of done. Like, just done. Like, just fucking, like, how long is this gonna last? Like, how much more of this?
It's when he's stealing the badge for the kids, in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Completely, like, just wants this fucking phase, whatever it is, to be over. He's really good at that. I mean, first of all, he's one of those actors that, like, has that great, ability to do facial acting, like little movements of the eyes and stuff. But he looks really fucking hangdog in this.
Oh, he's very haggard.
Down. Yeah, exactly. Like, just not a vain, performance where it's like, you fucking get,
just imagine being
jet
him,
black
because
back in the hair or whatever.
Because like it's implied that, I mean, well, we know probably it wasn't this, but that her mother, Annie's mother, had multiple personality disorder or whatever. I mean, she was really just the queen of a demon cult and probably was possessed by spirits.
Turns out wasn't even ill to begin with.
But imagine, like, she dies at the start of this movie. Do you think Gabriel Byrne's character, Steve, is that sad about this? It's like, finally, I get my family back, the crazy lady's out of my house, and she had her claws into Charlie and was making Charlie weird, or so they think at the time, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's beset with the death of his daughter and his wife just coming, unglued, and his son basically being, well, not. Oh, by the way, we know later not responsible for killing his daughter.
One thing you're reminding me of here is that's another thing that's like subtly woven into the film. There are those scenes where both she gets up in the middle of the night to go into that treehouse, and then there's that other scene where you just see there's a light on in the treehouse way before the end of the film. Yeah. I know what you mean, Monty. That does almost imply that when she's asleep or whatever, she almost carries out whatever the fuck's going on, and maybe there was just some cultist behavior going on anyway the whole time, but it's just off in a treehouse somewhere. Like, that almost implies it. So also. Whatever.
No, I just think, like, when we think about, all the characters in this movie and, the dissolution of this family, like, his understated performance is really understandable, right? Because the more layers you go through this, you just feel bad for the guy for all the bullshit that he's had to endure. And he's trying to be the calm center in the middle of this insane storm. And how do you juggle these things? Your wife is now blaming your only remaining child for the death of your other child. Like, that's so fucked up.
And he doesn't do anything, like he doesn't ever do, like I alluded to before, the horror trope of like you did something silly or why did you go in that room? Like, there's nothing wrong with the whole film. Like it's just a guy. If you see the film from his perspective, I don't know what you would never. By the way, he dies without ever knowing what was going on.
Yeah. There's probably some insane. There's probably some sort of like meta commentary about like how men approach grief and how women approach grief, I guess, and what the expectations are, because he's not, even though you can see how crushed he is and how deeply affected he is, particularly about the death of Charlie, he never, there's no histrionics from him. He never gives in to that emotion. You never see a scene where, he like loses it and he gets to have a Toni Collette moment. He's like very pared down and has to go through the motions and sort of understands as well, with the death of the mother, his role in this is to be emotionally supportive where possible, even at the expense of his own emotions. And that's a very real thing that happens. Lots of people do this. You might feel a certain way about something, but it ain't you've got to suck it the fuck up and be there for someone else. And we all do this at various times in our lives. And I'll say something, the entire family dynamic feels incredibly real to me, at least.
Incredibly fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it helps if you come from a fucked up family, I guess, to identify with it. Some people might not get that aspect, but the mother that's going through something, who doesn't bottle up her emotions and actually overshares and overspills and does weird stuff, and she's in her son's life in a really unhealthy way, represented, like when she's literally above him when he wakes up. Again, that's like just nightmare fuel. And then obviously as well, the way she treats her husband, the way she interacts with her daughter, there's no reticence about like, yeah, we know she's a weird fucked up kid. We know she's a weird fucked up antisocial weirdo, and we're all just gonna accept that and move on. And yeah, what else can you do, I suppose? So I love how the family feels like, even as it's coming unstitched, it feels like a very real unit. You can understand how these people all met each other, how they're all in each other's lives, how this has got to this point, and how, of course, it accelerates to the worst point. And it's just like, none of that is written. You don't have a backstory. You don't have the prequel that Reddit wants. You just kind of understand it intuitively, just based on little, contextual clues here and there. So, I mean, like, I think this, considering its fantastical elements, I think this film feels incredibly grounded in reality. Even to the seance. If you've ever been to a seance, they are that shit. They really are mundane. They're meant to be, all those cold readers. My aunt used to be in a spiritual church. And every Sunday, you better believe this guy could fucking summon up the dead. Regular as clockwork, and kind of that, like, the banality of it, of what is happening is incredible, right? You're making contact with the dead on the other side, and people would just treat it like it was a game of bingo, And so I think the film feels incredibly real right up until that final cascading event where you're like, severed head, head of a crown, cults all around, arise, Paimon, trumpets, end, right? Like, it's like, what the fuck? So yeah, I think the film is incredibly well done, considering this could have been a silly movie. It could have been a really silly film, but it isn't. It's actually a deeply unsettling film, and not in the slightest silly.
Love it. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave it there. Any final thoughts, Thorin?
I would just say also, we did do it in this order, but we didn't do it intentionally. This would make a great back-to-back fucking with Rosemary's Baby. Watch Rosemary's Babies first and then watch this afterwards. I think they will pair very well together.
I mean, I would just say that, like, ultimately, this film was a great calling card for what for me is the better cult movie. Like, if you like this movie, watch Midsommar immediately. It might be a bit too much to do them in the same day. But I think Midsommar, it explores similar themes in a much more interesting way. It's also grief that drives the mechanism that gets the characters to interact with the cult. The characters are also on rails. There is something happening in the background that they cannot prevent, and it is going to happen to them. But I think the way that Midsommar improves on Hereditary is the way the elements of what is happening are introduced. It has a very upsetting scene, which really
right up front too.
Yeah, and you just know immediately, like, holy fucking shit. And also as well, it's a lot more clever visually. Like, the you see in the foliage in the background, like, her dead relative and everything else. It's like loads of really clever stuff. And like, Ari Aster is, again, I think in terms of his horror calling card, he's just a master of like ratcheting up dread and just making you feel deeply unsettled. Midsommar also does something Hereditary didn't. It was happy to get silly for one particular scene, a mating ritual. I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but that scene is so silly, it goes right back into being horrifying.
Well, I think that's what's so good about it, though, is the levity is just in contrast to everything else. I mean, we'll definitely do Midsommar at some point in time, I would imagine.
I think so. But I mean, look, I also want to say as well, like, if you ever want to go just look it up. What A24 has done for horror. The reason we can say now we're in a horror renaissance, which we were talking about on the last episode, a large part of that is A24 and funding and making movies like this. And so many movies like this. It wasn't like we're going to make one little kooky horror film and then just not do it again. They have a commitment to the genre that actually goes back further than you might think. It was A24 that put out Tusk, which I know I keep bringing this movie up. I think it's one of the most unfairly maligned films of all time.
Here's the problem. Here's what I'll give you, Richard. If you want to use the angle you had before of a movie that stays with you, there are parts that are terrifying about that film and will haunt you forever. There's things I wish I could never see in that film. I just think, like,
mostly Johnny Depp's performance.
I think the first half of it's good, but then the second half for me loses me. But I did think, put it this way, it is a horrifying film.
I
just don't think it's a very.
But it's also it's a horror. It's a horror movie. It's a dark comedy in the same way that, like, it's just weird. I think Kevin Smith, just, like, people wail on him because he is a bit of a hack. But, like, and people always say, like, he's not good if he doesn't do anything out of the Clerks universe. Like, well, you won't let him ever step out of it. you as soon as he steps out and does something, you go, boo, that fucking sucks. And it's like, I think his I think some of his what was the other movie he did? Is it Red State?
Yeah, the one where it's all the, like, prepper type people, with the Christians. Yeah,
that's got some really good elements to it as well.
Yeah, true. Also has John Goodman. A few different people are pretty good in it. Yeah.
So whatever. But anyway, just to say, A24's commitment to horror and essentially giving Ari Aster the platform he's now got has given us already, I think, just a series of, like, excellent movies out of him. He's a super exciting director, technically competent, very thoughtful. There's a deliberate precision in everything he does, and it's resulted in some of my favorite films of recent years, of which I would put Hereditary. I know Duncan's not as keen on it as I am. This is like a 9 out of 10 for me, I want to say.
Me too. I mean, I really enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I think it's, like, incredible performances, rewards repeat viewing.
I don't know what else this film could do better. You know what I mean? I'm not like, I wish this, like, it just is a really good movie that accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do, with great direction, great visuals, great thematic fabric, great symbolism, and great performances. Like, what do you want from this movie?
Should have chose a better demon than Pyman. That's what it could improve on. Like, not,
I think it's kind of funny.
Camel riding Pyman.
On the whole aspect of, like, the renaissance of horror as well, another reason why I think the modern films work, though, is that the problem with so many horror movies being independent films and funded in Europe and stuff like that is oftentimes they have to look a bit schlocky because they don't look like a big budget Hollywood film. In the modern day, tech is so amazing. Like this film, by the way, has a $10 million budget. Yeah. You would never know that. Yeah, you would just assume this was a $40 million Hollywood film. You would never know. Yeah. So that's the other thing. The tech and the cameras and all that shit has just gotten to, and the editing studio. It's gotten like with music to the point now where you almost can do this in your bedroom. It feels like you don't have to have as much money in the bank to do these things. And in this case also, isn't another aspect of the horror renaissance that you now suddenly, in the same way as prestige TV, everyone forgets to mention this detail. It isn't just that people like HBO did it. It's that suddenly film stars would be in TV shows. Yeah. That was a rule. You never did that. If you don't know, guys, film stars didn't even do fucking talk show interviews at certain points in history. They would famously, like Robert De Niro style, they'd only do like one every 10 years. They intentionally kept away from stuff. So in the same way as prestige TV is mega because it has like the best Hollywood actors in, these horror films also, like someone's directorial debut can get actors like this in it. That could never have happened with a tiny independent horror movie in the 70s, you know.
I definitely think as well, I think one of the reasons why, you know, horror has had this renaissance, because I've maintained, if you want, like, I say it every time we bring this up and we talk about horror, like meta-textually, like it is the genre you go to. Like if I ever want to know about what a society was anxious about, you know, going right the way back to pre-film, you look at the text, you know, you've already alluded to some of the tropes in vampirism, right? But it's like there is a reason why, let's say, there's lots of horror about men becoming animalistic, orgiastic, uncontrollable beasts, because there was a genuine fear about, you know, well, what would happen if polite society didn't remain so polite? Men are men after all, you know. There's aspects to that, you know. We've got obviously as well the fear of the unknown, Lovecraftian aspect. So you go to horror, that's what you look at. And I think with everything that we've lived through, you know, with COVID, which was its own horror movie for a lot of people, and then obviously just the screeching nightmare that is like, I'm just going to engage with politics for 30 seconds. Oh, right, and I'm never doing that again. And, you know, and it's like, what it's done is it's given us a permission, I think, to be horrified and to kind of like look at these ideas. Like, I'll say it again, I'll repeat it. Weapons is the perfect horror movie for about culture war bullshit. It's actually perfect. It is so pitch perfect. It just blew me away the first time I saw it. I was just like, yep, that's right. The weaponization of children, the weaponization of religion, the weaponization of politics, the way these things are in your home, the way these things are in your life, the way that you can't get away from them. That is perfect. It's the perfect horror. I've never seen it summed up so perfectly. And let's be clear, that is about a creepy witch taking over kids' minds. but that's the text. Fuck the text in that film. The subtext is genius. And so Ari Aster, what Hereditary probably is for me is, even though it's pre-pandemic, I think it's like pretty much, it's the start of something where a genre that is like fallen out of fashion, fallen out of vogue, it's where it's ultimately being ushered back in to being not only fashionable, but financially successful, and a vehicle to say very interesting things about society and where we are. And that's why now, I think probably every month, you've got a really top-notch, critically acclaimed, profitable horror movie coming out.
Or, I mean, a streaming show,
people want
right?
to get scared again.
Like,
yeah, right,
Netflix
exactly,
can't stop getting Mike Flanagan to do stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the next one he's doing? I think that's already been announced, right? And you know, we got the big Frankenstein remake coming out soon as well.
No, I actually think, because we haven't mentioned some of this on these shows, people might not know, the last like 2 or 3 years, it is insane how many like one-off self-content, Late Night with the Devil, Heretic, there's a million of them, Barbarian, and most of them, by the way, are actually like above average. They're all worth a watch pretty much, even though some of them are overrated potentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad you brought up Late Night with the Devil. Just what a crazy,
it's a really fun one to watch.
Yeah,
too.
what a crazy little interesting film.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, obviously we're old enough to have watched the thing it's based on, Ghostwatch. I don't know if you watched that live with Michael Parkinson when he pretended to get possessed by evil. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, the BBC literally showed you they pretended there was a real demonic possession of a famous TV host, and they just played it straight to the point where people were like ringing in and going, "Oh my god!" Yeah, people really believed.
Yeah.
So it's like, look, we're in a great time for horror, but as I said, I think that every modern horror movie, all the A24 movies, they really do owe a debt to this film.
By the way, notice also this generation of horror, Richard, is like I said about this film. Actually, it's gotten out of the late 80s, 90s. I'm postmodern and this is actually all metaphor. No, it's really happening. These are demons, monsters, mutants, people killing vampires. It's all back, bro. It's all back and literal. And if anything, it's more dope now.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, like an actual demonic possession movie that like isn't an allegory for like something whack like republicanism. We actually just get an actual demonic.
It's why you might have a different opinion than me. I'm not that big a fan of Jordan Peele films because his are like whatever you show me on screen is just a big metaphor, isn't it, mate? And I have to swallow your interpretation. These movies are just horror films, mate. They're just about dread and terror.
I love Get Out.
Get Out is good. It's the rest of them that are not good.
I love Get Out.
Because I was excited about Us, and I was like, oh man, this is disappointing. But anyway.
I bounced off Us because it was too convoluted in the story it wanted to tell. I thought it was really good visually. And there was some very good performances in that film, but as a story it was kind of whack. It was one of those where it was like, instead of just presenting what was happening, it tried to tie it all together and tell you a story. I think that's what he did better in Nope. He just said, like, I'm not explaining what the monster is. And by the way, I think Nope is also another really, really good film about what it's like to be the villain of the day on the internet and how people like crave attention. You know, the alien is a camera shutter and it follows you everywhere. It really, really good. The child actor allegory. It's like I think Nope is a much better movie than people give it credit for. It's just kind of like how do you follow Get Out? How do you do that? You know, it's tough. And I think that's what I like about Ari Aster. Ari Aster, I haven't even seen his new film that's coming out.
Eddington, no, I haven't seen Eddington yet either. I've been waiting for it because it was in theater, so I'm waiting for it to hit the, to be on streaming, and then I'm going to watch it.
But I am definitely excited. I watched Beau is Afraid as well. That is an unreal dark comedy. Joaquin Phoenix, just fantastic.
Look, man, everyone's gonna bounce off that movie. You can't be a normie and watch that movie.
Yeah, but it's like Ari Aster said, he wanted to make like a nightmare, like as what is a nightmare to him, and he did it. It's great. So I just love it. As I said, Hereditary is like, I said everyone's trying to use this term elevated horror now. Fuck that. But that's the term the critics are like using. Well, this is the movie that essentially gave everybody permission to use that term. It's intelligent. It's well structured. It's well written. It's serious. It doesn't shy away from the horror. It doesn't need an out or a twist or an it's a bit up in the air about what it all means. It doesn't need any of that. It just tells a fucking really horrible story really well in a way that will horrify you, unsettle you, and stay with you. And certainly in modern times, it's good that we are revisiting occult possession, stuff like that, because that kind of, as the church has fallen out of vogue, so has anxieties and fears about this. But as we've got to now, people as a vehicle for horrible things in your life, it's almost as if these things go around, these things are in cycles. So,
and like you said earlier, Richard, about it being horror being a reflection of cultural anxieties, we're going to switch gears pretty substantially next week to Exhuma. And
the rarest of things, a horror film I haven't seen. So I am fucking psyched for this. It's very
the reason why I wanted to get it in this occult horror arc is that the rest of the films are about Western stuff. So Western religion, primarily. Obviously, we have the Antichrist and demon summoning and witches and our other three movies, things that people are very familiar with. But this one takes a very hard look at something entirely different, which is, this is about a feng shui geomancer and a Korean shaman called a mudang, and it is all based in Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism and all of these Eastern religions and thought structures and Eastern mystical traditions. And it has nothing to do with Western stuff at all. So it's going to be really fun. If you guys are unfamiliar with these things, I will probably be doing a lot of explaining about what these things are.
That's going to be a Monty heavy episode for sure. I mean, listen, I love the Wailing, so sure. I am excited.
But like literally the main character is like a Korean shaman, and Korean shamans still exist today in Korean society, and I'll tell you some stories about some on the next episode. But it is going to be a really different approach to occult horror, and also this movie just escalates crazily, and it definitely ends in a very different place than it began. It is also the 6th highest grossing Korean movie of all time.
Crazy when I looked into that.
Above Parasite, by the way, guys. Yeah. It had made more money than Parasite. It was wildly popular in Korea. It was the most profitable movie of 2024 in Korea. So, you know, this was a big time hit. And it was a big time hit in Asia, not in the rest of the world, because I think many Westerners will find it difficult to understand what the fuck is happening, because you have to have knowledge of the following things, like kind of like Korean shamanism, somewhat about feng shui and like grave geomancy, knowledge about Korean-Japanese relations, knowledge about Japanese history going before they were an imperial power in Korea. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and people are probably going to find it probably pretty confusing, but it's really fun too. So there you go. We'll see you next week for Exhuma. Enjoy.